So, I was telling Patrick that you literally were my first interview. So you were doing a talk at,
I kind of figured that's what that was about.
yeah,
At Cowork Landing.
yep. And so you were talking to the young and hungry.
Yeah.
How long have you been speaking?
It will be probably about, actually taking it seriously, about a year and a half.
Gotcha.
So for about a year, that was more so the building process of crafting the skill of speaking. So back in 2016, that's when I decided that I wanted to be a coach and a speaker. But I wanted to do coaching more than speaking because I didn't like being in front of people. But then when I went into Toastmasters, that's when I really realized that speaking was my true gift and coaching would be second, but speaking was where I really connected with people and people actually listened and I could get a message out. So speaking became my passion.
Okay. That sounds great. So tell us a little bit about the business that you have now, Emerging Excellence.
So Emergent Excellence is about basically speaking to the inner greatness as opposed to the outside circumstances. And it stemmed from me growing up, just kind of taking the easy way out. You know, when you don't necessarily come up with a lot of times you do things just to get by in life. Just enough just to get a little bit. So you're not really thinking about thriving as reaching your highest potential. You just want to do just enough so that you can get a good job where you make enough money just to make ends meet and you retire at 65 and then that's your life. But at some point, I got to the point where I wasn't really happy with my job. You know, I was looking forward to the weekends because it was my way of escaping everything.
What job was that?
Recruiting. So I did recruiting for 8 years in different sectors. So it's financial industry, also retail, always high volume. But, you know, I saw myself helping people get a job, but at some point it became about the numbers. You know, it's just about how many people you can push through. And it wasn't necessarily getting the right people in. I would speak to people who had these amazing stories. I'll never forget one, she actually had her son taken from her, was actually killed while she was at work, her infant son. And she still had this spirit about her that she wasn't giving up on life. And when I hear stories like that, where they have those hard times and then they are still kind of persevering, and the jobs that I'm doing are more lower level, but they're still grateful for that opportunity. When I have people like that, that's what really resonated with me. Those are the people I wanted to help. Okay. But then you had people who knew managers. They knew managers and they kind of felt entitled to the job. They didn't want to work for it. They didn't want to give me the right answers. They didn't really see the purpose in doing it, except they knew somebody and they just needed some extra money. So when those are the people that are getting hired as opposed to those people that I know can do the job and they'll be grateful for that job, they'll stay with the job because they see this as an opportunity, then I had a problem with that. And I realized it wasn't necessarily about getting the right people in. It's just getting people in general. So I needed to find something that fulfilled me more.
Okay. I want to go back to something that you said a little bit earlier that kind of caught my attention.
Okay.
You said how when you come up when you don't have that much, you don't really want to have as much drive. Mm-hmm. Like you just want to make ends meet.
Right.
Do you think that's the case overall? Like in general, people who don't come up with a lot, they're not as driven, or do you think it's the opposite?
So this is what I think. I think at a young age, we all have this ambition that most people say is unrealistic. But then life happens. You start to see your circumstances where you're struggling every day. Some days you don't have lights. And sometimes you see some stuff happening in your house that is not necessarily what you would want a child to see. You know, things going on, maybe drugs are in the house, things of that nature. So you see this stuff, and then you watch TV and you see these people with the perfect life, and you start to say, okay, this is something out of touch with reality. I don't know anybody like that. So when you see everybody around you having the same circumstances as you start to just think that this is all there is to life. And when you don't have that exposure to culture, you don't have that exposure to things outside of your neighborhood, it's easy to get into that mindset that, I'm just going to do whatever I can do to make a few dollars. And that's where people get that hustle mentality. Hustling, honestly, that's what I hear a lot of people say, but when you think about it, it's not necessarily doing something to where you're thriving. It's about just making a quick buck, and you're not necessarily doing something that brings value. You know how to speak to people, you know how to get them. You can sell to them, but you're not necessarily giving the value that you're selling. You're just hustling, trying to make a dollar. Hustling and grinding. I hear that all the time from entrepreneurs. And when you think...
Do you think that's cliche?
I think it's cliche. I think people, when they hear that, it sounds like you're doing hard work. And you're doing hard work, but are you doing smart work? As an entrepreneur, at some point, you're going to burn out if you're just doing hard work. So you have to start to develop systems in order to expand. You can never scale if you're trying to do everything yourself and not really taking it to the next level.
Okay. So I think people that are putting in the hard work and grinding, I think that's a thing that they develop from themselves. And the systems that are in place are learned arts. And many entrepreneurs, they don't really know how to find those systems.
Right.
Enter emerging excellence.
Fallacy. Yes.
Okay.
Yes. So because that's the way I kind of ran my life before. What I did was I would work hard. I would literally work 12-hour days on my job. And at the end of the day, we still were falling short with the classes. And I say class because I was doing call centers.
Okay.
So we would have classes of 20 people every week. But we were falling short. I was staying all day, but nothing was really getting done. And I had to realize that my life was going away. I wasn't enjoying life. I was working hard. I was tired. And still we weren't getting the results. So what did that say? That I needed to take a step back and see how I could be more efficient. Not just necessarily put out more production, but making sure that the production that I'm putting out was bringing more value. And I think that's also where, not just in the corporate America, but with entrepreneurs, that's what we sometimes do. We say we're going to stay up late until 2 and 3 o'clock in the morning. But when you get to that point where you're exhausted, are you really putting out any true value anymore? You're making more mistakes. You may not be able to have any creativity because you're not thinking anymore. You have to sleep sometime. You have to rest. You have to rejuvenate because we are humans.
Sure. That's interesting because I have a closed Facebook group, and I posted in there that you have to sleep.
Yes.
The idea of being awake for 20 hours as an entrepreneur is a myth.
Right.
You have to make sure that the hours that you are awake, you're very efficient with them.
Right.
I want to go back again a little bit to when you said there were some people that would be grateful for those jobs. So when I look at it, and I speak to lots of people that have different jobs, obviously. And when people say, I'm just grateful to have a job, I frown upon that. That job is earned or taken, right? So you didn't just find a job.
Right.
You went and sought after it.
Right.
And so you should be feeling like you're entitled to that job. You've earned it. You went on the interview, you worked on your resume, you have the skill set.
Right.
And so I don't allow people to tell me that they're grateful for their job. I say, well, you've earned it.
Right.
You should. And I just wanted to touch on that a little bit because you hear that a lot.
Yeah.
I'm just grateful to have a job in this economy.
You said a key word there, and that's something else people have to start to realize is some of the words that they're saying is causing them to be complacent. When you say, I'm just happy just to have a job, again, that's that survival mindset. That's where you don't really see yourself doing more, so you're just going to be okay with mediocrity.
Minimum required kind of thing.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So I see that happen a lot in the corporate environment. You'll see people complaining about jobs, complaining about no opportunities, complaining about some of the different circumstances in there. But then you say, so do you want to do more? And they say, well, I'm okay. I'm just happy that I do have some type of job. But you're not really trying to do more. So to me, it's just kind of giving up and just taking on what you have, but not really using that inner potential that most of us have. You know, stepping outside the box, doing something a little bit different, even if that means volunteering to do a different project, stepping outside of what your usual role is so that you can see that there's other opportunities outside of what you do.
Okay. Do you believe that ambition is from within or is it taught?
I believe that ambition, I feel that ambition comes from within, but in order to seize ambition and to actually create a strategy, I think that has to be taught. You have to have the right people to influence you. And I say that because it wasn't really until I met my mentor that I really started taking speaking seriously. I didn't really see myself being able to make this an actual career that people would be interested in paying me. And my mentor is Dr. Michael Miller. So after I met him at a book publishing seminar, we lost contact for maybe about 2 months. But then after that, we would always speak every Monday morning.
Motivational Monday?
Yes. So we have
Did
that.
you hear his episode in the podcast?
Yes, I did.
Okay.
I did. Yes. So every time I would speak with him, at first I was like, what does this guy see in me? Why does he even want to connect with me? Because I don't really have anything going for myself. But he saw some things about me that I didn't necessarily see at the time. I was in the front of that seminar. I was taking notes. So he knew I was serious about what I was doing. And then he also just heard certain things when we had a conversation that I didn't necessarily see for myself at the time as well. But the more I started to listen to him, the more I started to interact with him, just some of that stuff started to rub off on me. And some of his mindset started to instill in me. So I needed to see someone who was actually making it happen in order for me to start to see, okay, well, you yourself can do some of that same stuff. And the more I surrounded myself with people that were doing things as opposed to people that were just okay with the mediocrity and not really pushing themselves more, the more I could see that I had a viable career and I actually had a gift that I could develop.
Okay. I mean, Dr. Michael Miller is probably a mentor for several people that he doesn't even realize.
Mm-hmm.
I've known him for years as well.
Yeah.
So tell us what a transformational mindset coach is, because some people may say, that sounds like, horse crap. It sounds like life coaching.
Yes.
And what gives you the authority and the credibility to have a title like transformational mindset coach?
Yes.
Unpack that a little bit.
Okay. So first we have to unpack the myth about what life coaching is. So most people, when they hear the word life coach, they think that means that the person knows what's best for your life. But that's not what a life coach does. A true life coach, what they do is they know that you have whatever that solution is, and they help you to get to that. And that's by using strategic questions and getting insight from you, because you have to pull it out. Have you ever been to a consultant who will tell you you need to do this, this, and that, but you never do it? And they say, well, if you had did what I said, you would have gotten the results. But
they get paid either way, right? Consultants.
They do.
That's the thing about consulting. Yeah. They get paid whether you do it or not.
Right. But just because it worked for them, it doesn't necessarily mean it's going to work for you. And what they're saying may not necessarily resonate with you because it's not coming from your viewpoint. And with coaching, it's different because some people are stuck in their jobs, which is what I help people with. Career stagnation, career transition, those types of things as far as their mindset. So what it's doing is transforming the way they see things, their perspective. When you are, again, thinking, I'm just this, I'm just that, there's a thing called a self-fulfilling prophecy. And I'm pretty sure you've heard of that. So when you start to say certain things, you start to think that as well, and then it just starts to translate into the way that you go about doing your everyday activities.
You believe those things you're saying?
Yes.
Sure.
Yes, so it's just manifesting in your actions when you start to say things. Like if you say, well, I'm never going to be able to get out of this debt. So you don't start to implement actions that will change that. You don't start to watch the way you spend. You don't start to watch when you use a credit card. You sometimes overspend because you're trying to compensate for some of those things. So it's about first changing the mindset of how you feel about yourself, how you feel about your capabilities, and then you can start to see a transformation in some of your circumstances, some of those things that are problems in your life. And that's what a mindset coach does. It helps you to transform that mindset, and then we start to create a new success strategy for your life. Because once you see, okay, well, I've done this before, instead of looking at the negatives, look at the positives in your life. And once you start doing that, you start to feel more empowered. And then you take it a step further, okay? Now that you know this, we're not going to focus on the why anymore things happen. We're going to focus on the what now. It's not about focusing on your problems, it's about focusing on the solutions. And if you get people in that solution mindset, then they can start to manifest some different
Okay.
outcomes.
So you focus on your particular target market, so to speak, that's millennials?
Millennials, because millennials right now, we are the biggest group as far as the in the workforce. We are at 35%, and in 2020 we're predicted to be over 75% of the workforce. But a lot of people misunderstand us, and they think that anybody beyond 35 is a millennial, which is not true.
So what's a millennial to you?
A millennial is between the age group of about 24 to 37. And right now we're in that group that people tend to group us all in the same thing. They think that we're lazy. They think that we don't want to do work because we're always on our computers, on our phones and everything, but they don't realize that we're in a digital age now. And the digital age can be for us or it can be against us. It's all about the person's perspective and how they use that. Before, you had to go out hand and feet, bootstrapping in order to get yourself out there. But now with this digital age, you have the opportunity to be in front of millions of people if you know how to strategically place yourself in front of them with just a certain hashtag, with consistency. All of this stuff, you can put yourself out there a lot quicker than you could previously. But some people, they're not doing it correctly because they are getting this instant success, but they have not necessarily created a plan of what they wanted to do when they get out in front of these people.
So I think that there are groups of people who think millennials are lazy and they don't want to put in the work.
Right.
But then what'll help justify that is you'll see millennials doing stupid things, and some people are eating Tide Pods, or they're posting naked pictures of themselves and they complain they can't get a job, or people don't respect them, or it's difficult to talk to a millennial without them raising their eyes from their phone. And so some of those stereotypes are justifiable. But I think there's a large group of people that recognize millennials are able to communicate and grasp an audience very quickly. Obviously, the internet is probably, I'd say, maybe 25 years old at the oldest, where consumers were able to utilize it. And so when you think about that, right, well, everyone knows how to use the computer and their phones, but the smartphone's only 10 years old.
Right.
And so you weren't on your phone as much. But if you sit on a bus or you sit on a train, you see everybody on their phone. And so millennials know how to get in front of those people in their eyes. But when you're tweeting ridiculous things, or you're taking, pictures of yourself doing whatever it is that makes you look like an idiot, those are the things that get the attention.
That's another key thing, and that's the difference between someone who, this is why the digital age can be for us or against us, because that's what people are looking for, attention. But some people use the attention for popularity. Some people are using the attention for a platform. And that's what we have to realize, that if we can get millennials on that mindset of this is a platform, you have people listening to you now, people watching you. Now, what are you going to do with that attention? Use it for a good cause as opposed to just getting some likes. Like, you can use that to actually create a legacy. And that's what Emerging Excellence LLC is doing, trying to get them out of that mindset of just getting attention for popularity, but using that for their own platform.
I think that's a great way to word that, because again, I'd say there's probably a majority of people that don't use it for the platform. They use it for, hey, look at me. And so when people look at them, then they have the attention they wanted. However, if people comment on those behaviors, then they get upset, right? It's just like if someone dyes their hair purple and paint their lips black, and everyone stares at them, and then the person says, well, what are you staring at?
Right.
I say, well, you, because isn't that what you wanted?
Exactly. Right.
And so that instant dopamine, right? So when you have people like your page or like your pictures or comment on it in a positive way, and you have tons of people, and you keep checking, oh, I'm only at 100, oh, I'm only at 150. And so that's a dopamine release. And so that's actually an addictive feeling that people get. So how do millennials move away from that? And what is your message to them to help them move away from that?
So that's actually an answer right there that actually has several layers to that. So as you stated, number one, there are people like that do certain things that are negative, but then there's a lot of people out there that are trying to navigate a different culture. So what we're learning is that, of course, with Instagram and Snapchat, people want to see people living a lavish lifestyle. They call it living your best life with the millennial generation. That's something that's big for the millennials. You want to live your best life. So they don't want to necessarily see the hard work that goes on behind the scenes. They want to see you on the boats. They want to see you in the fancy places, spending money. They want to see all of that. So sometimes it's kind of hard to navigate that, because you can have a great message, but if you don't have anything that's visually appealing to them, then they automatically go to someone else that's showing that. So it's about balancing, showing the message that you want, but then also giving them some things that are visually appealing. And that's what I had to learn as well. When I first started, I was just posting messages, just a very inspirational message.
Just text, plain text?
Yeah, just plain text, just a message, and they get a few likes here and there. But then when I started to incorporate actual pictures, I would get a photographer, have him take some pictures of me in different places. And when I started to incorporate that, I noticed that people started to engage in that more. And then if you place it in the right way, where you have a picture that has you at a certain angle and you have a message that kind of complements that, then that's when you really get the engagement. So it's about being strategic when you're doing certain things. Of course, some people take it a different way. They get the attention for the popularity. But if you're trying to do a platform, you have to understand this generation's mindset and try to navigate that and still get the message through.
Okay. So I think there's twofold there. Number one, I think, and I've spoken to a few people and even Patrick about, Patrick's an engineer, by the way, who we were talking about how the written word no longer has the same power that it used to.
Right.
The written word used to be so powerful,
Right.
people would follow it and follow it to the end of the earth. The Bible, the Ten Commandments, Socrates, all of these different written things that are just so valuable. And the written word is no longer as powerful as the spoken word.
Right.
And so the spoken word gives you attention
It does.
and accountability.
Right.
And I can send my spoken word to New Zealand right away.
Right.
My spoken word is all over the internet.
Right.
And it actually represents ownership for me because it's my voice.
Right.
If something's written and it's typed out, there's no way to prove that it's me.
Right.
Unless you're doing forensics.
Exactly.
Right. And so we combine that with Facebook and all of the social media. Initially was text, and then it became photos with text, and now it's video.
Right.
And so we're at podcasting now. And so I believe that the spoken word is so much more powerful than the written word is currently.
Right.
Because now people are using Audible for books. People are speaking to their cars.
Right.
People are saying, Alexa, order me soap.
Right.
Alexa, call my doctor.
Right.
It's all about the spoken word.
Right.
And it's also consumed passively. And so when you have written, you can't drive and read. If you
Right.
can, you're going to smash into somebody, which
Exactly.
happened all the time.
Exactly.
Now people are listening, and your videos are actual visual.
Right.
But there's no video there of people just there.
Right.
People scroll over photos, and they'll stop at a video.
Right.
Because the video has your spoken words.
Exactly.
And so with millennials, what I see, I'm a little bit older than that, and what I see is there's so much distraction in all of that, and it's becoming linear. It's quickly evolving, changing. Last week was X, now it's Y, tomorrow Z. And so there are millennials spread out over all three of those letters. And using it as a platform should be absolutely. You should be using your Snapchat for your videos and your business. You should be using Instagram, not just to take pictures of your food. No one's doing that anymore.
Right.
And if they are, they're probably in their late 50s taking pictures of their food because you know what? No one really cares that you're taking pictures of your food.
Right.
Eat it.
Right.
Experience it.
Right.
You go to a concert, everyone has their phone out recording the concert. You're not looking at the concert. Right? And so I think those are some of the bad raps that millennials get. So help clarify that a little bit. I said a lot, but
No.
help clarify that.
So that's a great point as far as that. I do believe that sometimes millennials lose the experience of life by trying to live out their entire life through social media. They want people to see that they're living their best life, but you're not truly doing that because you're creating an image and you're not actually in the moment. I think it has to be, again, a balance of that because especially if you're trying to get your name out there on social media, you want to show a little bit, but at the same time, in order to truly get the best experience of life, you have to put the phone down sometimes. You have to just unplug from everything and just be in that moment. And being in the moment and then maybe doing a video later or a podcast later about that, it can be just as effective as opposed to just always doing a video. Because most of the time, I used to record, every time I went to a concert, I would record pretty much the entire concert. But let me tell you, I rarely go back to those videos. I have tons of footage, but I never go back to do that. So what was the point in me recording that instead of enjoying that moment that I spent hundreds of dollars going to that concert for?
Yeah. Well, there's an argument that I wanted to share that with people, right? And I did experience it. I got the gratification, but you live one life, right? And so, they want to share that with their friends and you want to record it and say, hey, this is where I am. So with success, it used to be you bought the car, you bought the house, you wore the clothes to demonstrate evidence of your success. And that's common. That's why people who have nice things demonstrate their success.
Right.
It's also a way to subliminally demonstrate your intelligence. Right? So you're like, I'm smart, I got a lot of stuff, I'm successful, that's why I have the nice house, the nice car. And there's nothing wrong with that.
Right.
I think what millennials are missing is they're trying to say they're having these things and the evidence of success, which is a pseudo, not real situation.
Very true.
And I think that's another part of why they get a bad rap.
But then you also have to consider depending on the industry that they're in. So being a speaker and being in certain areas where you're maybe in PR, maybe you're an artist, if you don't necessarily have a following, then certain people will not even look at you. That'll be the first question they ask. Well, how many followers do you have? How much engagement do you have? When you're a speaker, that's also something they look at if they're looking at conferences. Okay, what is your reach like? Like, what could I gain from having you on my lineup? Will people even come to this conference because you're here? And if you don't necessarily create that experience for your followers, then you're going to lose them, and that could possibly affect how you make your money. So again, I understand what people say with the millennials, but it's also understanding that we're dealing with a new way of thinking. It's something that evolves over. Each generation has something different. And for us now, it is managing the digital world, managing how we are seen on social media, because people, whether we want to say it or not, people look at that as a way of seeing what your value is, even though we know that your value doesn't necessarily show up everywhere on your social media. So.
Sure. And I agree with you on that. How do you get advertisers? How do you get commercials? Even like with our podcast, it's very niche. It's like we're speaking to a very specific group of people.
Right.
And now they may be millennials or they may be more experienced entrepreneurs.
Right.
But I also think, who are my followers? Are my followers a bunch of duck-lipped 20-year-olds? They're not coming to your conference to see you speak.
Right.
They're only following you
Right.
maybe because you follow them or someone you know follows them. And I'm absolutely not beating up on millennials. I think they're very innovative. I think they know how to get things done with less effort, and that's the idea.
Right.
I think that millennials, they create a lot of new things.
Right.
And millennials are also the group that says, we're not going to do it that way. We're going to do it our own way.
Right.
And they're paving their own way. And I think that's very important, absolutely, for every group and every demographic and every generation. But I think millennials get a false bad rap from some of the people who have 1 million followers doing idiotic things.
Right.
And so how do they overcome that? You speak to a group of people that may be entrepreneurs or may want to be entrepreneurs, and they're on the fence. Or they may listen to what you have to say and change their mind or be motivated.
Right.
But what about those millions of people who are just idiots, right? They're eating Tide Pods. They're having this liquor challenge. They're showing themselves on a boat being thrown off because they don't know how to sit on a boat, or, walking on coals, or whatever idiotic things are done, right? There are people in all generations that have done that.
Right.
So how do you steer the ship in a way to get full-on acceptance of the digital world that's constantly changing?
Right.
And the millennials that are constantly evolving?
Right.
And an audience that's constantly distracted? I said a lot there again.
Yep, right. So with that, again, this is something that's not just on millennials. It's also on just our population in general. What do people pay more attention to, whether that is negative or whether that is positive? Some people are laughing at it, but some people are saying negative comments, but they're bringing it up on TMZ and Good Morning America and all of this. So it's still notoriety.
Are people watching those shows?
People are seeing it on YouTube. They're posting clips on Facebook, so it's still getting engagement regardless. So the point is, it's a lot of attention again. So some people don't care if it's negative or positive, as long as they have people that are watching them. That's all that matters. So it's a matter of shifting what we pay more attention to. I'm actually going to be a part of a panel discussion about collaboration in Tampa, and one thing that people say is that Tampa has a negative overall perspective. People look at us in a different light because we focus on negativity, which I don't necessarily believe. There's a certain subset.
What do you mean by that?
Some people believe that people in Tampa cannot collaborate. People in Tampa are small-minded, and that people
who are these people?
That's what I'm saying. There's people out there, business owners out there, some business owners, but it's a small subset. And that's what we have to kind of change. People generalize that to the entire population. Just like you and some of the people I know out here that are in this same area, you all don't have that type of mindset. So I know that that's not what Tampa is about. But when people are only used to their own small subset of people, they'll generalize that to the entire group.
Are you referring to Tampa versus the surrounding areas? Because Tampa is the number 2 city that millennials are moving to.
I know this.
Second to Silicon Valley.
So that I know.
In the United States.
Yes. No, I know that.
Okay.
I know that. But there are people in Tampa that don't understand that. There are people in Tampa that don't understand that, and you have to kind of give them those facts. You have to let them know that Tampa is number one, an emerging market. There's a lot of millennials coming here, and there's a reason.
Emerging market.
Right. There's a reason why they're coming here, because there's lots of opportunity here, and there's lots of room for us to build and grow. But if you are stuck in that mindset, again, and this goes back to what I said earlier about people who are only used to certain people, and because of that, they only see so far. If you are only in that mindset that you see that far, then of course you're not going to see that there's vast amount of opportunity out here.
Sure. I guess you are the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with.
Right? Exactly. So if that's all you're used to and that's all you're seeing, and when you're all speaking together and having conversations, well, this person did this and this person, they don't want to do this. I heard about this person, but you're all in. Tampa is more than 5,000 people, and that's what they're usually looking at.
Yeah,
their social media. They're seeing what's on social media, and they're not realizing that it's just because the people that you interact with on your social media, those are those people in that mindset. But if you start to eliminate some of that negativity and start to open yourself up to go to different places, to meet different people, you'll be exposed to more. You will see what there is out there. And that's where I feel we are kind of limited. Well, we're not limited. That's where I feel that we are challenged in certain areas of Tampa. Not Tampa as a whole, but getting people to see that we can be much bigger than we are. I mean, people think you have to go to Atlanta. You don't have to go to Atlanta.
If you want to be stuck in traffic, you do.
Look.
Atlanta was great in '98.
No, that's what I said.
It's still great now, but
it's great, but I can't do it. Yeah.
So are you referring to specific areas of Tampa, maybe
Yes.
underserved, underprivileged? Is that what we're talking about here?
That's exactly what we're
We can
talking
open
about.
up on that.
Yeah, that's exactly
Listen,
what I'm talking
this is
about.
my show. We can talk about whatever.
Okay. But yeah, so, there's, again, when you don't grow up with much and then you start to come up with a little bit more and you're saying maybe you want to be an entrepreneur or you're in a corporate America and you get a little bit of money or whatnot, but you still have those thought processes that were embedded over time, and it's just systemically in you where you don't necessarily know that it's influencing your decisions. You're only going to see what's in front of you. You're still not seeing what is outside of you, what opportunities are there, what people of influence can be around you, because you only see the immediate surroundings. And if you're only just getting by, you're not going to be able to go to a chamber of commerce. You don't realize that we have those resources. You don't realize that there's things with the city that they have different courses and grants and everything. When you say you don't have any money, there's different things out there. There's resources. You don't have to necessarily have the money, but there's resources out there. You don't necessarily have people in your network, but there are people outside of your network that are willing to work with you. But you just have to be more open.
So you do think that ambition can be taught?
No, I believe ambition can be taught. I think that ambition is there. I think most people have it, but I think that it's a
maybe have to be
nature.
stimulated?
It's a nature versus nurture thing. I think by nature, most of us are ambitious, but it has to be nurtured correctly.
Okay. So you're a graduate of USF?
I am.
Psychology?
Psychology, yep. So I did focus in clinical psychology, but I also focused in industrial organizational psychology. So
What does that mean?
Basically, it applies psychological principles to the business world. So those are where you see people in human resources. They do the assessments, employee retention, talent acquisition, all of those different areas. So it's just about making sure that you have an effective workforce.
And so you use those skills and that skill set, and you've changed it a little bit. You've moved into a specific demographic.
Yes.
It seems like underserved millennials.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And so how long have you been with, when did you start Emerging Excellence?
I started it officially in August.
August of last year?
Yes.
You're a busy man.
Yes. Yes. These past 2 years have been great. So again, in 2016, that's when I decided that this was the route I wanted to go. It took me maybe a year to kind of figure that out. I had went to a trip where there were lots of people that were happy with their jobs, with their professions, and I just didn't understand that. Like, we're here for a vacation, and you all are talking about your jobs. And
what percentage of people you think are happy at work? Now, we're not saying they're having good days. We mean that they're overall happy with the job they have and the work they do. What percentage would you think that is?
Less than 50%. I actually researched that. Less than 50%. And 78% of people that leave their jobs do so because they were unhappy, because they felt unappreciated. It wasn't because of the money. It wasn't because of that or the hours. It was because they felt unappreciated. So that is what we're kind of dealing with right now. And I do believe part of that is with the millennial mindset, because we don't necessarily stay in places that we don't feel wanted. And
that's another positive for millennials.
Yeah.
If they're not happy at a job, they'll just leave.
Yes.
And
that's
a
positive and a negative.
I think that's a positive.
It's a positive, but if you leave a place, you need to have a strategy in place. And a lot of millennials just do things spur of the moment, and they don't really know what's next. Now, it's great that you have the initiative to do it, but you need to know what the next steps are.
What if you're immediately unhappy and you're just like, I hate this job, I hate going there every day? How long should you stay there? Until you create a strategic plan?
Here's the problem with acting on that. That's emotion. And if you always act on emotion, you're always going to go in circles. You're not always going to be happy with everything. Sometimes you have to do things that you don't want to do to get to where you want to go.
Sure.
So with the millennial mindset, we do get emotional sometimes, and we make these instant decisions.
I think everyone does that, though.
That's true. That's true.
I mean, it depends on your risk analysis. If you have children, you're less likely to just walk away from your job.
Right.
If you have debt and obligation,
right.
You're less likely to. I get all that. I'm curious to see. I don't think millennials saying, I hate my job, I'm leaving it, is a bad thing, because probably that job is a piece of crap, and they can find another piece of crap job.
You just said the right thing right there. That's exactly what's going to happen, though. But that's exactly what happens, though. They hate the job, they leave, go to the next place. They hate that one, they keep doing it, and it's a cycle. And it's because they have not necessarily understood what it is they're missing from that job. They have to first assess what that is. What is it that I'm missing? What is it that I want? And then actually get out there and try to find that job. Because if you just keep going to places because you hate it, you haven't really, it's just like with relationships. There are some people that go to relationship, and then they say that there's no good women or good men out there, but that they really take the time to figure out what it is that they really want out of a mate before going to that next person.
Or what they even have to offer.
Right.
Sure.
What they have to offer as well. And that's what you have to do before getting yourself out there, because you'll be lost and you'll just find whatever there is. And sometimes that might be making less than what you were making before. And it might be worse work conditions, but because you just took that leap, you didn't have time to adequately prepare yourself so that your next opportunity could be what was more in line with what you wanted to do in life. And I think that's where we have to also get them into the mindset of what is the job, or what is that career, actually? What is that career that is aligned with your purpose?
And so some millennials, or some people, they may not even know what it is they want to do yet, right? And so it's possible for them to say, well, I'm just trying to play devil's advocate, right? So some of them will say, well, this is experience that I'm gaining, and I'm learning what I want to do and what I don't want to do. What do you say to some of those millennials?
I say that's fine, but you have to be intentional. You have to be intentional with how you do that. So you can go to a different position. There's nothing wrong with that. And I actually recommend that, especially if you're in an organization where there are lots of places where you can move, even if it's laterally, where you're doing a different position, to see if you like that. But just make sure that you are taking the time to assess what it is about that job that you like or you don't like, so that you don't just find yourself going in a circle, just wandering around aimlessly. You have to have a sense of direction when you're going to different things. Everything has to have a purpose. It has to be set up for what you're trying to do.
Enter emerging excellence.
Yes.
Okay, and you help people. We keep saying millennials, right? So I don't want to
I
seem
mean,
like I'm putting people in a box
no, I mean,
or
it's millennial. It's
separation.
millennials that I generally work with, but that can be anybody in their career that's doing that, because it's not just millennials that face that.
Right.
It's just that right now we're the biggest group and the biggest generation in the workforce. So I understand the struggles that they have, because that was me at one point. So
Sure.
I understand what they feel, but I know that also resonates with some people that are in a different generation.
So how old are you?
I'm 31.
31. Okay, so you're kind of right in the sweet spot.
Yeah.
Okay. So I see that, but what happens when you begin to, when things continue to evolve, right?
Yeah.
And so you have millennials that, they want to settle down and have a family because in your 30s, that's kind of what happens, right? You find someone that you care about, you love, you want to spend time with.
Right.
And now it's time to no longer call yourself a millennial, but now you're a family man or family woman, and
Right.
you need a career.
Right.
So how does that fit into it? We're not talking only entrepreneurship, right?
Right.
We're talking about overall
Career. Right.
career.
Yeah. So that's just something you have to kind of factor in as well.
Do you service them differently?
Them, I mean, I wouldn't say it's serviced differently. Everyone has their own circumstances, whether you're in a family or you have some other obligations. Everyone has their own situation, but it's just a matter of creating a strategy around your situation. You can't look at that as something that's going to hinder you. You have to see, okay, there's always a solution for what the obstacle that I have. And if you start to look at it that way and stop looking at everything that's stacked up against you, you'll always persevere over that. And it's just about getting them into that mindset. Look at the solution.
If you had to narrow down all the way, who is your ideal target person? Like one person on the planet Earth that you want to speak to, who is that?
That person would be the person that started off without having any money. They were able to get through life, kind of skate through life for a little bit, because they always took the easy way out. But then they started to realize that life is more than just a title.
When you say the easy way out, what do you mean by that?
Meaning that you did things that you were okay at. You didn't necessarily challenge yourself.
Okay.
You didn't necessarily challenge to see what it is that was more aligned with it. It doesn't necessarily matter that you like the job or you like your career. It was something that you were good at doing or you were okay with doing, and it got you a paycheck. So just getting that American dream, having a job, getting a family, and retiring. That's what a lot of people do. You get a
cheap watch,
right.
half your 401k
right.
taken back.
Exactly. And complaining about everything that's going on in the world. So that's what you're kind of taught to do, that you just do that, you go about your life, and life is over. But we're at a time where this person knows that they have more to offer to this world, but they may not necessarily know how to navigate that. They don't know who the resources are, they don't know how to access those resources, and they don't know how to get to their next step in order to put a plan in place. So that would be my ideal candidate, because we will start to, number one, reframe their perspective on things. Then we'll also start to see some of those successes that they've had so that they can see that it is attainable. And then we'll actually create some SMART goals so that they're able to create that strategy to get them to that next level, and realize that success is not something that's instant. Success is a journey, and we have to appreciate every step in the journey, whether that's a step back or a step forward. Because even in the step back, what that is doing is setting you up for a great comeback. But it's a matter of, again, being intentional with every move that you make. Because if you're intentional and you do get set back, what that does is you'll take the lesson from that. You won't see it as a loss. You'll see it as a lesson, and that's going to propel you to make sustainable success.
What do you define success as for your own business?
For me, I define success as being able to impact lives and being able to get someone to see that whatever they want to do in life is attainable, that we are all created for a specific purpose on this earth. And if you just believe in that, and you are intentional. Again, that's a word that I always use now, because once I became intentional with things, that's when things started to move for me. Once you become intentional, once you believe, and once you are consistent, then anything is possible for you.
That sounds good. We use intentional a lot in the Mastermind group.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's really important. And not everyone knows how to do that.
Mm-hmm.
Right? They're kind of just flailing around, and some
Right.
people, they want to push through, or other people feel, I'm just going to work harder,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so there's the idea of, whether you're working for someone,
Right.
or you're working for yourself, or whatever the case is.
Mm-hmm.
Intent is really important. I always use the legal term that intent follows the bullet.
Right.
And so the idea is, if you're intending to do something and that's the outcome, then that's great.
Mm-hmm.
But if there's a different outcome and that wasn't your intention, you still have to be accountable for that outcome.
Right. Absolutely.
And many people, they don't like to do that.
Right.
I think that's one of the things that another one of the things that millennials get a bad rap on.
Mm-hmm.
But part of it rings true, that there isn't as much accountability. Right? If you have 1 million followers, things you do have influence.
Right.
And so you have to remain accountable for that.
Right.
You can't become reckless.
Right.
You can't say reckless things.
Right.
You're entitled to say whatever you want.
Right.
But there is an obligation to your community at large, your followers, and to just society in general. As an
Right.
influencer, you have a responsibility to be a little bit accountable and more responsible in your actions.
Right.
And that's where, we say a lot, we kept saying millennials. I'm not that far removed from a millennial, but
Right.
I think that's where a lot of that is stemming from.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of the bad raps are that combination of things. And we want to see nice cars, we want to see boat rides, we want to see money. And, it used to be hip hop that showed a lot of those
Right.
things. It was really a demonstration of success without realizing it. But when you look at, the people who have mega money,
Right.
they're just regular people, and they wear
Right.
regular clothes.
Exactly.
They don't need to show off. I mean, they may go and eat, $500 steak or drink a $1,000 bottle of wine,
Right.
but they're not, having a $20,000 watch.
Exactly.
You know what I mean?
Right.
Sitting in front of a rented Ferrari.
Right.
And so it's a combination of things. And overall, I really feel that what you're doing is very important, because that's it seems like they're left behind.
Right.
The underserved, underprivileged, and when I say underprivileged, I don't mean, people who don't have quote unquote privilege. I mean,
Right.
the people who don't have access to resources.
Right.
And that's what I mean by underserved and
Right.
underprivileged. Regardless of your color,
Right.
regardless of your culture,
Right.
if you don't have access to resources,
Right.
then you don't have the equality of opportunity.
Right.
And so that's what we're talking about here, those types of people. And what you're doing seems like you have this passion for it.
Yes.
And it seems like you are pulling that in the right direction. You're looking to start a movement, is
Right.
what I'm gathering
Yes.
here. I follow you a little bit on social media, and I see that you're constantly speaking at different places,
Right.
on panels. You have these pictures that are really kind of making me say, well, what is this about?
Right.
And then you'll have a small caption under
Right.
it or whatever. And so I think that's really important and powerful, and I appreciate that, especially for this area, because we need a lot more people to be jump-started.
Right.
I'm an entrepreneur. I don't like to work for people.
Right.
I don't want to be told what to do.
Right.
But I also make my own mistakes.
Right.
I also am accountable for my mistakes.
Right.
And I don't want some guy that I'm, smarter than, making twice the money as I do,
Right.
telling me when I can go pee, or,
Right.
punch this clock, or Robinson, you're late.
Right.
I don't care.
Right.
Like, I'm late because I was focused on something else,
Right.
not, bringing, lots of money to this particular business.
Right.
I'm focused on my own plan.
Right.
So, I mean, we've talked a lot already, so tell us about how people can find your services, and we don't have to talk about costing, but is this something that people who are underserved and underprivileged can get a hold of, your resource?
Yes, so you can find me on emergentexcellencellc.com, And if you want to send a message, contact us at emergingexcellencellc.com. I do individual coaching as well as group coaching. And the reason why I do the group coaching is because I do understand that sometimes, especially with millennials, they don't necessarily have access to a lot of money. But I don't want them to go without. I want them to be able to get the same information and be able to take themselves to the next level. Now, the individual is for someone who needs to be worked on a more one-on-one basis. But the group coaching is going to be basically they're going to go through a 6-week program. And the program is helping them to kind of get rid of some of those things. So one topic is going to be letting go of resentment of the past. So when they had those rejections or they felt disregarded, it's helping them to get over that. There's another one speaking specifically to distractions in your life. There's one that speaks to being selfless versus being selfish, which sometimes we face where we want to give all of our time to people and our resources, but then we don't have enough for ourselves. So we have to kind of balance that. When are we being selfish in life and when are we being selfless? Because if we can't take care of ourselves, we can't effectively take care of anybody else. And it's going to be a 6-week program, so everyone goes through that, but we're all going to have an individual goal that they can do as well. So we'll have a time for them to go over that goal, and then we'll have like an accountability call with that. It's going to be a Facebook group, but it not only allows them to do it at a less expensive price, but it's also going to allow them to create sort of a community where they can see that there's other people that are dealing with some of those same challenges. And sometimes someone else in the group may have some insight on that specific challenge that they're dealing with. And then again, you have some other people. And
collaborative.
Yeah. And
okay.
That's something with millennials that we like as well. We like collaboration. We don't necessarily like just being stuck in that silo. We want the resources. So I have that where we have the 6-week program.
So just 6 weeks, sorry to interrupt. Your 6-week program, this is like a Facebook group, or is this?
It's going to be
group coaching?
It's going to incorporate Facebook for the group itself.
Okay.
But it's going to be outside of that where I'm going to teach them.
How often will you meet?
That will be twice a month we'll be meeting. So
Okay.
twice a month, and then on those off weeks we'll have accountability calls. And then they'll have the Facebook group where they'll also be able to engage with one another. And it's going to be limited to a certain amount of people per each class. And what we'll do after those 6 weeks are up, I'm also going to develop another one. It's going to be just a tier up, because this is called the Emerge program. So it's specifically allowing them to let go of those things that are causing them to not be able to have that self-awareness. And it's getting them to self-actualization. And then the next step is helping them taking it a step further as far as maybe going into their health habits, some of the financial habits that are causing problems, some things with their relationships and things of that nature. So that would be the next tier up.
So are you finding the people that can take your course, your class, are you going to them or are they coming to you?
It's a combination of both. So since I've been more active on social media, I do get more people that are kind of interested in services, but then it's also just being out in the community, doing speaking engagements, and just collecting that information. And that's pretty much been pretty good for me. It's been allowing people to see what I have to say, some of the value, and that's a way for them to connect. And I've noticed that before I was thinking about just doing individual coaching, but I was doing myself a disservice because there's only so much I can do individually. And I can still help and bring value to more people by doing a group coaching and doing it in a less intrusive way.
Okay.
Because some people may not necessarily be ready to have that one-on-one like that, but when you're more in a group setting where it's less confrontational, you might be more open, especially when you hear some of everybody else's experiences with what they're going through.
Okay. That sounds great. You shared a lot today. I mean, I know you vaguely, and I think I learned a lot about your business. I have been following you on social media, paying attention to all of that. And I think what you're doing is not only really great for that particular demographic, but just overall for for the area itself. We need more of that.
Right.
You know, I'm actually leaning into that a little bit as well. I'm not doing coaching, but we're masterminding.
Right.
And so that's part of, what we're doing. And so even though I'm not a millennial, I'm still speaking to some of those same people. So
Right.
I think what you're doing is really great. Before we wrap this up, so where can people find you again?
You can find me on emergingexcellencellc.com. Reach out to us if you want to book us for speaking engagements at contact us at emergingexcellencellc.com. On Instagram at Rickie Burney, RickieBurney. On Facebook, Emerging Excellence LLC. Look me up on there, and that's where you'll also see all of my upcoming events. And I do have quite a bit, so definitely follow that page if you want to stay in touch and know what we have going on.
Awesome. Thanks for stopping by, man. Appreciate you coming out.
Thank you for having me.